Hi everyone and welcome to Women's Health Matters. I'm Lucy Townsley, your host. I'm a women's health consultant. And on this podcast, I'm joined by lots and lots of guests with huge information, valuable information, covering all areas of your life. So I know it's called Women's Health Matters, but women's health comes under various degrees. So it's about our physical health, our mental health, our eating habits, our sleeping habits, and also, are you happy in your job? Financially, are you secure? Do you want to change that? There's so many really amazing guests that I have here. Also, don't forget about my I Can Do Menopause program. That's available to you as well. Also, my fertility program. So I have two programs that really suit women. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now, today I'm joined by Grainne O'Kane. I met Grainne through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an amazing place actually for meeting people. So welcome, Grainne, to this podcast. And I'm really, really glad you took the time to come on because I know you've got such great insight and valuable information to share with my listeners.
Thanks for inviting me, Lucy. It's great to see you again.
It's good to see you too. So tell us a bit about you and what you're doing, and because I know you've had a huge journey, because I've done a podcast with you as well.
Yes, that's how we first met. You were a guest on my podcast, which was great. So, so I'm at this stage really. I suppose I'm a social scientist, originally trained, and actually by nature, in a way, it's kind of, I think it's in my blood really to be a social scientist, which really means that you look at things from a range of different disciplines, and that you're always kind of testing, the sociology of it, or the philosophy of it, or the psychology of it. So, and the work I'm doing at the moment is as a wellbeing consultant. So I work with a lot of companies, private and community companies, around healthy workplace cultures. So, and we can come back to that in a minute, but really a lot of what's coming up, people kind of say, oh, I'm stressed. But it's what lies underneath that. And when somebody's not well in the workplace, it kind of permeates toxicity in the workplace. And so one or two people can create a very unhealthy working place for everyone else. And that has a huge knock-on effect on an individual who might be actually okay, but then you've this, poor influence in the work because people are stressed and outside of their window of tolerance, and then it has this knock-on effect that people then are bringing back on, like, actually I don't like my job, and they feel then that they're lacking purpose in their lives and they're a bit lost, so it has this huge knock-on effect, that interaction we have with each other, even just by being in the same physical space as somebody else. So that's one of the current pieces of work that I'm doing at the moment. My background, as you know, professionally is predominantly in addiction services and recovery services. So I still do a lot of consultancy around that, with individuals with addictions from alcohol, drugs, and gambling is a huge, I'm not going to say a huge one, but it's just, people are coming out more about the problems of gambling, and it's affecting, because we've so much more online betting, that it's having a much greater risk to people, I suppose, as well. So we do a lot of education awareness around that, and I would work with a lot of families who've been impacted by a loved one's addiction. And personally, as you know, Lucy, my story, I suppose, is I'm a single parent. Like, now I'm 48 and I'm a single parent with 5 children. My eldest is my daughter. She's 18. She currently lives with her father. She's doing her Leaving Cert this year. And I have 4 boys, 16, 13, and twins who are 11. But interesting enough, from a health point of view, I suppose I predominantly sit in the more mental health and emotional well-being strata of that domain of health. So I usually share with people the fact that I was born in the Magdalene laundries. And so I was born in the Magdalene laundries, and I was adopted. And so, have parents and siblings and all that usual stuff. The reason I share it is because sometimes we have a behavior that we can't fix. And a lot of it can be stemmed in childhood that we don't even really know where it came from. So the reason I shared the adoption one is as a baby, because I was removed from my primary caregiver, and particularly in the Magdalene laundries where there's like no eye contact and there was no touch and all that sort of stuff, that loss in me presented in all of my relationships, friendships, marriage, everything really. It's your personal truth. So there's a whole piece around adoption called adoption trauma and relinquishment trauma. And, you know, we don't, it's not really spoken about, and it's not something that you're counseled with as a child growing up. But I just use it as one of those extreme examples, really, because lots of people that I work with, and I would work with women the same kind of age group as well, like that you might, Lucy, when we're talking about fertility issues and menopause, and both your programs there are a real asset to people, because it's all the surrounding things that can influence people's health and wellness as well. So women will be coming to me and they might be like, oh, I'm just, you know, they might even be saying that they're getting bullied, but they're feeling that they're bullied. And it could be by a family member, it could be an in-law, it could be a friend, it could be a...
Oh, we've lost your sound. We've lost the sound.
First time that this has happened.
Sorry,
It's really...
just, Grainne, go back a little bit because we just lost your sound. So you were saying about women being bullied.
Yeah. So quite often a woman might be saying that she's getting bullied by a family member or by friends. Now, she won't even act, to be fair to women, the last thing they're saying is that they're getting bullied. What they'll be saying is they're having a difficulty with, and what is wrong with me. So most women I'm working with will be coming to me going, what is wrong with me? There's something wrong with them, that other people are unhappy. So that's, you know, it's really exploring that thread. And I suppose the hormonal differences that we have, you know, the chemical changes in women having more oxytocin and this disease to please, but also a lot of it around the social expectations on women, and then that thread of pulling it to go, well, what is your pattern? And so obviously as a separated person still trying to get divorced, but so dating and relationships is a whole thing that's coming up with a lot of people that I would be working with. And relationships are great because they actually teach us so much about ourselves. But what happens is women would be going, there's something wrong with me. Why aren't I happy in this relationship? This guy is great. Sure, he's doing this, but like no one's perfect. And not able to turn it to go, this is what I'm looking for in a relationship. This guy is great, but he's just not the right fit for me. And so often people get stuck in that fear of, but I just don't want to come out of it, or I'll think there's something wrong with me if I don't stay in a relationship because of societal expectations of it. You know, so it's, sorry, Lucy, I know I'm going all over the place, but it's
no, you're fine. It's fascinating.
What you were saying at the beginning, that, you know, a lot of when people are both physically unwell and what people will categorize under I'm stressed, and stress being this huge bandwidth of other things.
Yeah.
That, and it impacts their physical health hugely. I mean, I have seen people who, again, under that bandwidth of menopause, will have depression, will have aches and pains, are to the point that they think they've fibromyalgia and all sorts of physical problems, which when you thread it back are stress related, or they're linked to something else, and people have to work with all of the different areas. So when I'm working with well-being, it's like we're looking at individual well-being. You have to look at physical, mental, emotional, financial, relationships. Under physical, then there'll be a number of different domains under physical as well, namely sleep and diet. Relationships, a number of domains under that, because you've got your family of origin. A lot of us might be parents as well. Then you'll have friendships, neighbors, work colleagues, all different categories. Then you have the domains of education and employment and career progression. And then I find with women, there's nearly two categories, especially when it comes to education and employment. There'll be ones that feel very well educated and well experienced, but not necessarily feeling validated. And then I would meet others who feel and both equally hardworking and great at what they do. Others who just feel that they're not maybe educated enough. They are, but just feel like, oh, I should have this and I should have that. Really, that whole piece, I think that women are still generationally, even though we're better than when it comes to working mothers, we have more resources and more benefits when it comes to maternity, but actually psychologically and socially we haven't moved on. So women have this massive crisis of, well, I have to work full-time or part-time, parent full-time, take care of the house full-time. Like they're generally the primary caregivers. They're generally the leads in the organization of the household. You know, they're juggling a lot more logistics, even though it could be a really, really healthy marriage with a good division of labor. We will still find that women are carrying a heavier mental load, and that's definitely having an impact on relationships, on physical health, and with more risky behaviors like so smoking, vaping, heavier drinking, women on prescription medication. You know, it's coming out in that way. Sorry, Lucy, I know I went off on one.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, as you know, I do Chinese medicine, and when we first studied this, and there's a few things that I can really relate to here. So when I studied Chinese medicine, the first thing that they taught us about diseases was not from what I thought disease was, but it's very much from your emotions. Your emotions really affect your body physically. So you're absolutely right. And that's, it's very interesting when you say that at the beginning about wellness in the workplace, and that menopause is becoming something. And I think it's become legislated here about looking after women with menopause in the workplace. But going right back to what you were saying, it comes back from a lot of it of, a working mom feeling so guilty about leaving their child at home and going to work, but having no choice because financially a lot of us have to work. And also it's a choice too. Also, like, you're up that, you want to further your career, but you want to have a baby. So you're having this battle going on, which should you do? And that's a stress within your body. So it's amazing. You're right. Stress comes under so many different things, and the education. Like I used to be a racing jockey, and I left school at 15 and didn't consider my education because I just wanted to be a jockey, and that's what I did. And I went back to college, but I remember going back to study Chinese medicine when I was in my kind of early 20s. I was about 23 or 24, and I was considered a mature student. But I actually went for the interview thinking I was stupid because I had left school at 15. But I wasn't stupid, and I'm far from, and I know that now, but it's taken me a long time to get to that point where, and you hide it from people. You don't tell them that you are scared, or you thought you were stupid, or you weren't good enough, or any of those things. You hide it from people because it's a shameful thing. Well, that's how it would be. I would feel it is, a shame thing that I went through, not feeling good enough.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot. That it's it is how it's framed. Like if you think about it, you left school to become a racing jockey. Like how fantastic was that? Like an athlete, competitor. You had an opportunity and a talent to do something that none of the rest of us, but the majority of the rest of us didn't get to do, and you took that opportunity. And we have this, particularly in Irish society, that it's school, college, career, family, house, or whatever. So but anything outside of that mainstream pathway is all, like even my daughter is thinking, I don't know if I'll get into college this year to do what I want to do. I might travel for a year. And her father's like, oh, that's not a good idea. If you travel for a year, you won't come back to college. I'm like, of course she'll come back to college. And even if she doesn't, if she comes back in her 20s, that's okay. You know, it's like it's actually okay. Like through one way or another, what we're trying to teach people is to be financially independent, however
Yeah,
they do that.
yeah,
So I hear a lot, as you're saying there, women that, and you'll hear it in general conversations, even if you're out for a meal, and you'll notice women who'll be like, "Oh God, somebody else take a look at that. I'm not great at reading, or I can't, you know, or I am, my maths is awful." And you're going, you manage your family budget. You know, your maths isn't awful. You know, it's this, and I see it with teenagers that I'm working with at the moment. Like I work with girls, sixth class, first year, second year, third year, and a lot of what I'm trying to do is tap into at what point, not that the teacher did it intentionally, but the child's reaction to something that happened in the class meant that they lack the confidence to speak up in class. They've made a decision that they're stupid at maths, or they're stupid at spelling or reading, or they just don't get history, you know, whatever it is. But it's in that moment in the classroom that they have decided, I'm no good at that, and they carry that then all for the rest of their lives. And even when they're trying and they're doing well, say maths, for example, is a common one. So they'll be trying and doing well, but it just takes getting something wrong and maybe not somebody not reacting in a supportive way to validating the efforts that they've made, that it just cements it and goes, yeah, I am absolutely, why bother?
oh, it's so scary, isn't it? I actually had a terribly nice man in my clinic. He was in his kind of early 40s, and he was a recovering alcoholic. In all fairness to him, he knew that if he drank again, he was going to, that was it. He was on a one-way route, and it wasn't a good one.
Okay, this is gone. Yeah.
Yeah, he, you know, like if he continued drinking, he was going to die, and he knew that. So he came to me a few times, and we were talking, and he was telling me then in school, this is why it's so important. When he was about 7 years old, he said as a family they didn't have very much, and they were always never dressed that well because they were kind of secondhand clothes, or, you know, he said we didn't have much. His parents drunk, but he'd learned all his spellings. This really sticks in my head. He learned all his spellings that day, and he went in and he was dying for the teacher to ask him. But the teacher didn't ask him. But then she did ask him something that he hadn't learned, and then she called him stupid. Now, I suppose it was in, you know, like in a way that probably meant nothing to her, but it meant everything to him. And he said he ran away from the classroom and he swore he'd never, ever learn another thing in his whole life again. And he cried. And it was really sad because he didn't have then the support from home because his parents were drinking. Yeah. And he didn't get it, but he's got it now. He's found a really lovely lady in his life. And he said, she's shown me so many ways and things. And he's a really smart man. He started his own little business doing turf and logs, selling to local people. And I was like, oh my God, like that's amazing. But an amazing, amazing man, a smart man. But just
it's interesting just in that moment. And I know like he didn't have the support in his family, but even for children, because parents come to me all the time and go, you know, well, my child's using drugs or my daughter has huge anxiety. Like that's a big one at the moment.
Anxiety,
you know, like
massive.
And like children don't have the wherewithal to, and when I say the wherewithal, it's like they don't have the emotional literacy to be able to go home hours later or even half an hour later to say, this happened to me and I didn't feel good at that time. Do you know what I mean? Because what happens, all of us, is we try survive in the moment and we have to put a brave face on, or we have to go run away and cry or whatever. So we're taught And we are taught, and it is resilience. Like, we can't be just going around crying the whole time. Do you know what I mean? We do have to be able to regulate our emotions at all ages. But even in healthy homes, for want of better language, children don't have the literacy to be able to come home and say it, nor might they have the recall. So that just ends up cemented as a decision in the unconscious. And that's it.
It's really interesting. I was listening to a podcast with oh my God, Michelle Obama. And she was talking about one of her children. I can't remember which one she said, coming home from school going, I've got anxiety. And she was like, hold on a minute, lady. You know, in her head, she was very funny, actually. She made me laugh. She said, she's 11 years old. There is no way that this child can have anxiety. She doesn't even know what this is. So she was like, I'm going to discover what's going on here. And it was really funny the way she did it. She goes, right, we're going to find out what this anxiety is. And she went on and it worked out that the anxiety was because she hadn't done her homework.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, well, she was like,
that's normal anxiety.
Yeah. But obviously had heard this word and was using it to go, oh, I've got anxiety, I need to go to the doctor. But that's what it turned out to be. So they dug deeper to find out what was going on. And it was because she wasn't doing this homework for this particular teacher. And I'll probably get this story slightly wrong because it was a while ago since I listened to the podcast. But yeah, that was the problem. And they were like, well, you know how to get rid of your anxiety. It's not medication. It's just doing the homework. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that's simple, but sometimes it is.
I think it's a great
that.
example, Lucy, because it really equips not just parents, but all of us at all ages to go and look at what's the wider context here. Because anxiety is, you're even kind of going like, well, let's unpull that thread. What is it that you're feeling and thinking? Because anxiety for you and me could be completely different. So it's really a nervous reaction to something. And yeah, and it's like, what's the wider context? Because even if, so I have clients who be like, oh, I've gone for such and such and I need to get a diagnosis. Have to get the diagnosis. And it could be neurodiversity, anxiety, depression. And I'm like, that's grand. Okay, so what diagnosis are you looking for? So great. And I'm like, okay, so let's just imagine you have that diagnosis. What then? Because even when you get the diagnosis, we still have to do the physical, mental, and emotional work. It provides some insight, possibly, depending on the diagnosis. But it may not provide people the insight they're looking for. And it's certainly, people think the diagnosis is the cure. But the cure is the same, whatever the diagnosis.
It's true. It is so true.
Like, health is always the cure.
Yeah, and our bodies and our minds, we do want to be healthy. Like, we don't, we're not, we're all constantly working to be healthy. The body's constantly working to be healthy. It doesn't want to be in ill health, which is, an interesting way of looking at it, rather than, considering that you don't feel well all the time. Your body does want to be healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I can't remember what I was reading. I think I was probably reading something earlier, but there's so much information available on all of the different platforms that people have have multiple reinforcing misinformation. So somebody will tag on to something and go, oh, this is it. I'm going to do that and it'll cure all ills. And again, it's to look at actually our well-being, our health is multiple layers and it's a journey. So as you're saying, our body wants to be well, but our body, like anything, like if your car is broken, the mechanic can only fix one thing at a time. So we can only do the same. We can't, it's when people want to lose weight, sometimes they're like, okay, I'm going to buy all the Lycra, I'm going to join the gym, I've researched the clubs I'm going to do Slim and World because that diet suits me, and I couldn't do that Atkins, and I'm going to do this. And so they've picked the diet and they're going to do the shopping and all that sort of stuff. And then it's a white knuckle in it. because actually we can't do it all, because then you have to do it all and you're thinking about it all the time, and your life gets in the way
Big time.
of that. You're like, your children want this and they want you to cook that, or you have to go to work and you have to do, or so it's like having your goals but having the steps that get there. So just like the mechanic, you can only fix and make one change at a time.
It is so true. It is so true. You have to, it's like that 100-mile journey, isn't it? You can't like start at 100 miles. You have to start on mile 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to that point. But the journey is the journey on the way to the end is the spectacular bit. It's not when you get to the end, that's your achievement. But on the way is all the learning and the different things that you learn about yourself along that way.
I think that's the key. People, there's a bit around the end point always changes because we're in constant motion and growth, our body and our minds. Like once we start something, if we really lean into it and go, where is this going to take me? Instead of what happens is we revert back to our default settings. So you'll see that all the time people lose weight and they're doing great, and then they'll go, I don't know what happened. It's all after coming back on and I have to start all over again. And that is soul destroying. In actual fact, people don't ever end back where they started because they learned something on their journey. They learned something about themselves. So it's really to help support people and go, well, what did you learn on that? Because you'll actually get to that point quicker the next time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had so much success the first time and been able to believe in yourself. And the fact that you did it already means you actually do have it to do it again.
You do, yeah, I agree with you. So going back a little bit on your history, being born in the Magdalene laundries, how did you know that from an early age, or is it something that you found out later on in life?
So I knew I was adopted. So my parents are in their 80s. My dad's 86. No, my mom's 86. My dad's 84. And I suppose and I have 3 siblings who are biological children to my parents. And so they would, and I'm the youngest. So when they were going through the process of adopting me, it was very much the recommendation of social work at that time that you tell the child as early as they can understand. And that is kind of common in Ireland now still. That would be the recommendation. That's not always what happens, but that is the recommendation. So in fairness to my parents, even though they're as old as the hills and they didn't know anybody else that was adopted, and everybody had said, don't do it, you'll ruin your life. You have 3 children, why would you do this? They were kind of dead set on doing it and told me from probably about, they say 6 or 7. I know all the stories because they've told me the stories of telling me and how I reacted and all that sort of stuff, but I actually have no recollection of any of it at all, which would make sense because it's a traumatic thing to hear. So I don't, I wouldn't have a memory of it. That part of your brain would shut down to go, I'm not your mom. You have another mom, loved you so much that she gave you away because she couldn't take care of you. So really the mindset that they set up was really good. My thing about adoption and I really would love to be, I suppose helping people at kind of a national adoptees at a national level around this, is that I suppose my piece is that it's 2 sides of the coin, because as adoptees you're taught to be so grateful. Like, it's not that your adoptive parents are saying like, oh, you should be so grateful we loved you and nobody else did. But you get it from a young age. You go, oh my God, my parents didn't want me, but these people have taken me in. That's how you join the dots yourself. So you have this kind of attitude for gratitude, which is good. But then it kind of does put you on the back foot of all relationships, because you kind of feel, well, I better be really well behaved in this relationship because, people leave me. I'm abandoned and rejected. Like that's That's what your personal truth is, you know. So, but the thing about adoption is, even with social work and everything, like they do a piece around tracking your families, your biological families. They don't actually prepare you for any of that at an emotional level, or how to heal from that, or what the purpose of that is, or where that fits into relinquishment trauma or anything like that. It's really just that's traditionally because of the vacuum that biology has in our lives, and then there's no one to facilitate the ugly side of adoption, the shadow of us that goes, we never get to say, oh my God, somebody didn't want me. I was handed away. This baby was just put in a cot and let like that from, even though intellectually, you know, that may not have been the situation, but as a baby, that's what it felt like. It felt like lying there, crying, and learning that nobody's coming to you, or certainly the person that you hoped was coming to you isn't coming to you. So it's really to go, how can I look at this through the eyes of the baby whose needs weren't met? Because when you think of a baby, and I know when I had my babies, Jesus Christ, like it was your every move, your every breath, your every thought was, you know, to meet their physical and emotional needs, to make sure they were being cuddled and fed and warm and nurtured and loved and played and developed, you know. So with adoptees, none of that other stuff, which is very much a part of us, gets addressed. It's kind of all repressed to go, well, weren't you lucky? So even I was discussing it with somebody last week, and their response was, yeah, I get all that, but you really were lucky because, oh, it wasn't about me. I was talking about other adoptions. And she's like, but they really are lucky because if somebody doesn't adopt them, then they could be in an orphanage or they could have this. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get that. But it doesn't change the fact, like, yes, they are lucky, but they were unlucky too. And we never look at the unlucky side. Does that make sense? So anthropologically, you know, that's where the loss is, because people expect to be with their biological family, and like we know all the attachment that comes from womb, you know, and the pregnancy, and that's all gone like that.
What age were you when you were adopted?
So I was adopted when I was about I think about 6 weeks. So but what was interesting, again, see, my parents tell the stories and it's real funny now, and it is funny now, but and I didn't know I was born in a Magdalene laundry till a few years ago. And so when they got me, I was non-responsive, you know. So like we had a very, very busy household. My parents would have also taken care of my auntie's children. She was widowed, so there was 4 children there as well. So they would have taken them in every holidays and some summer holidays. And one of them was my godmother. And so everybody kind of was used to having babies around and like looking after babies. And it was a busy enough place, but you know, pots were banging and doors were banging. And as a baby, I was non-responsive at all. And they just thought, oh, that is just, you know, there's something wrong there. So they went in to see.
From 6 weeks old, you'd learned that already at 6 weeks old.
Yeah, to be non-responsive. Yeah. So they went in to see, was there any, you know, hearing impairments or anything like that. And they were like, oh, no, we didn't pick that up, but that's no problem. We'll take her back and give you a hearing baby. That's not what you asked for.
What?
Yep. That was just one of the times. There was something else wrong with me and they went to check it and they were going to keep me. And they were like, no, this is our daughter. Like, they're like, you don't understand. And they're like, no, it's no problem. We have plenty. It's just like, no. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it is, you know, so it is that.
Actually, there's a friend of mine, and he was telling us the story. They adopted, his parents were worked abroad a lot. I can't remember what his dad did. I can't remember. He did tell me to do with government anyway, work. But they always wanted 4 children and couldn't have a 4th one themselves. And they ended up adopting a little girl from like Libya or a different country. So she was a completely different color skin and everything, but they adored her from the minute she arrived in their family, and they never consider her anything else apart from their sister. Is that the same with your siblings? I know siblings argue and fight, because they do. And I remember him saying that he didn't get on with his brother, but he gets on with his sister and his adoptive sister really well. He says, I absolutely adore my adoptive sister. And he didn't say adoptive, actually. Sorry, I'm saying that now, my sister. And then he showed me a picture of her. And I was like, because obviously he was waiting for my reaction, because he's white, she's black. And I was like, oh, I didn't expect that. And then he told me the story. I was just like, for that split second, because you are, and he did it on purpose.
Yeah. No, it's good fun. Yeah, it is good fun. So yeah, no, my brothers and my parents would completely forget that I'm adopted, which it's an interesting one, because not that they have to forget. It's good that they forget, because I'm just family to them, right? So I had twins, as you know, 11 years ago, and my dad and mum were so excited. And they came down to see the baby. They come into the hospital, and they couldn't come into the hospital because it was like swine flu or something at the time. And so they had to wait till I got back to the house. And so when I got back to the house, they were down and they were just overjoyed. And this was definitely going to be the last of the grandkids. So, and it was twins. So they were just overjoyed, and they didn't have to share a baby. They could arrive and they can hold one baby each. And it was just the dream come true for my mother. She didn't have to share. And they were sitting arguing over, that dad had more twins on his side of the family than mom, and that I obviously got it from him. And I was like, you do know I'm adopted, and biologically that's just not possible. And he's like, you get it anyway, it's my side of the family. He just was like, And even recently, my parents' 59th wedding anniversary, and I organized a lunch with my siblings and nieces and nephews and kids and all. And a couple of the cousins hadn't been there, the nephews hadn't been there in a while, and they're like, oh my God, Killian looks so much like my dad. And, my sister was over from America, and people were like, you two are so alike. And so, but only with some family members will I go, yeah, of course we are. Yeah, that they picked me out in the orphanage and went, we'll have that one because she looks like us, whereas even other parts in the family, people in the family, I wouldn't say it even as a joke, because so this is something that the adoptee has to deal with as well, is that you're handling other people's discomfort with it, even a family member, they're hurt. So one of my brothers just isn't able to, he's like, I don't know why you keep going on about being adopted. And it's not that he's angry about me going on about being adopted. It's that it makes him uncomfortable because he interprets it as that I don't accept that I'm full family.
Okay. So
his interpretation of it. So, and that's okay. Like, I'm sensitive to that, but that's another thing adoptee has to do. So they really are not open about their adoption story within their adoptive family, because they don't want to hurt anybody in their family, especially their parents. So that's another emotional piece that you're holding. And family members will say, to them, or, especially, people that I work with in mental health and emotional health would be like, oh, I have a brother who's adopted, like, I don't think he's ever done anything about it. And you're like, well, he might have, he just probably didn't talk to you about it, because it's so uncomfortable. You feel like you're betraying them.
Have you tried to ever find your adoptive,
I've met them, yeah. I met my biological mother in my 20s, and She is lovely woman, obviously, but she really never recovered after the Magdalene laundries. And I met my biological father, who is married with kids, and I only met him a few years ago. And he does not, his wife doesn't want him to stay in touch with me or meet their adult children, and he has all his daughters have twins, and yeah, but they don't want anything. The wife doesn't want him to tell anybody. So you have all that projection then as well of been repeatedly rejected, and the projection of the shame of it. So her feeling the shame of her husband having had a child before they got married, that non-acceptance, as well. So you hold that.
So obviously, when I'm helping women with whatever area in their life, we try and give them tools, like so many different tools that you can reach for when you need it. So what do you do for acceptance for this in this situation? How did you deal with it?
So, well, for all of the things, it's really about establishing your own sense of well-being. So I suppose when I'm summarizing it, I'll say it's about three things. It's about self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-efficacy. And if you can have those three core things first and foremost, everything else can stem from that. So what I mean by that is, when it comes to self-awareness, if I understand who I am and how I am in the world, so my personality type is different than yours, my personal history is different than yours, and it's just having an awareness of what that is. And it is okay for me to have, and this is a really critical thing, it is okay for me to have my story and be connected to somebody else's story. So how do I explain this? So my parents were alcoholics, and for years I couldn't say it, because I really wouldn't want somebody to think bad of them, because they're amazing people, like they're great parents, and I adore them. But that's their journey, and their journey as alcoholics impacted me, and it is okay for me to have that weaved into my story, because it informs part of who I am. So if out of loyalty I can't say anything about my parents being alcoholics, obviously, most people don't broadcast it everywhere. But like, if you can't even say it to yourself, if you can't say it to your therapist or in whatever space, because you're so fearful and guilty and feel that you're betraying them, you're carrying all that. So you're actually not self-aware. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's and even like, so breaking up with my ex-husband, like, there's lots that comes with that, but you're going, what is mine and what is his? So even separating as the relationship, but then also separation as parents, even if we were together as parents, you'd be going, well, what is mine and what is his? What kind of person am I? What are my values? What are my limiting beliefs? How can I release them? What type of parents do I want to be? And how do I get there? So that's all self-awareness. And self-acceptance is key, because you can be aware of who you are and not accept it. And that's where people are in this constant conflict with themselves. Because it's okay. So that's what compassion is. Compassion is the Latin word for being with suffering. So that's where acceptance brings us to go, okay, we accept that none of us are perfect. We accept that we're all flawed, and not flawed in a going for a job interview where it's like, oh yeah, my biggest weakness is that I work too much. No, we are flawed. We are imperfect. That's what's great. That's what makes us all so interesting. And to accept that, And some of it is to go, those flaws, those hurts might just need hugs or looking after, or accepting that they're there. Like grief is a huge one that people have, that they're trying busy their way out of it, but never actually just go, yeah, it's there. We don't, it doesn't go away. Like, all the primal wound trauma from being adopted, it's not going to go away. Having parents that were alcoholics is not going to go away. Been bullied as a child, not going to go away. Been in a psychologically, emotionally abusive relationship, not going to go away. But I learned something about myself in those, and I can mind myself in it and take care of myself. So that awareness then allows us protect ourselves, because people come to me and go like, what if it happens again? Or they shut down because they'd be afraid that it would happen again. But if you're aware of it and you learn the tools, it's not going to happen again. But like, obviously I'm not going to get adopted again, but do you know what I mean, around relationship patterns and stuff like that? I know I might get lucky and get adopted by a millionaire, but anyway, so that's the awareness. And then the last piece is self-efficacy. So we're born with different amounts of self-efficacy, and it's really how do you build that up? So self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to succeed. And what we'll see with a lot of people, women in particular, is that they actually don't believe. So even when it comes to, I'll just use losing weight again. So if you're asking somebody, they really want to lose weight, they're unhappy with their body, they don't like how they feel, they don't like the clothes they're wearing, and do you actually believe you could be a size 14 or whatever it is that you want to be? No. So if you don't believe in it, then no one can help you. What we need to do then is work on our ability to believe in ourselves. So I suppose they're the tools for me, is that everything that happens, I'll ask, what did I learn about myself here? And I will check in and see what it is I'm believing about myself. And do I believe I can get myself out of it? Because every day is, full of ramps and roundabouts. Like there isn't, people are looking for this utopia where every day is just going to be, when I get this done, everything will be great. What's great is when you get you done, when you're looking after you physically, mentally, and emotionally, then every day is great, because there is ramps and roundabouts, and it's okay. They're just ramps and roundabouts because you can get through them, and you're able to fix them or take a different road. So they're the core lessons. And then it's really about daily routine, Lucy, as you well know. So I have certain things that I do in the day that it's just works for me, doesn't always work for other people. So I will start my day with lemon juice, and then afterwards celery juice, and I will drink a metal detox smoothie. I will have porridge with fruit and cinnamon. These are but I have it because I love it. It's not I have it because I dread it. I have found foods that I really like, and I'll change them around depending on the season and stuff like that as well. Or I'll find things when I'm out and go, oh, that's really great. I'm gonna figure out how to make that when I come home. So my morning, I'll have kind of prepared a bit the night before, because I like to start off my morning very clean, and that sets me up for the day. I'll always try and get some meditation or yoga in. I will go for a walk or go sea swimming every other day. Haven't been in the sea for a couple of weeks, but I'll probably get in today. And it does depend on my work schedule as well. A lot of these things I can weave into, like yourself, I'm like most women, a fairly busy schedule, which is, 4 kids that you're running around here, there, and everywhere, and boys who just eat like wolves. So you're constantly either shopping or feeding or cooking or cleaning, and your own business and all the contact work that comes with that too. So it's to find things that weave for you. The other thing that I do that I always recommend for everybody should have is to find what your scaffolding is. So for me, I do somatics every Tuesday night. I am in Toastmasters. So somatics is for my physical well-being. It also has kind of a mental well-being component, but it's really for physical well-being. Yoga and sea swimming the same. Toastmasters I'm in, which is about personal development and public speaking, and that's really for my intellectual well-being and social well-being. And what else do I do? Oh yeah, I would go for a massage regularly. I will do acupuncture at different points because I get, especially in the winter, sinuses. I do auricle acupuncture every fortnight, which just assists with good sleep patterns and reduces blood pressure. Not that I have I have no physical complaints. I'm not on any medication, anything like that. What else do I do? I see my therapist. So if I have something stressful coming up, I see a therapist anyways, partly to do with kind of my work as well. I go to an energy healer about every 2 months. I go to a kinesiologist every 2 months. Like I see somebody every week, but I mix it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it's really good to do
I have my regular weekly things, and then I have my regular daily things. Okay, so what I would say to people is start with what you need daily, but those other things, the scaffolding, is what I put in as like to me they're treats. I love getting a massage, or how you feel after acupuncture, or how I feel after some energy work. It cleans house. And yeah, so I call that my scaffolding. And if I had, so say when I had that family event, I would have a very fractured, dysfunctional family of origin. As much as it gives me joy, it can be bonkers. I double down on that stuff and know I need to take care of me during this period. And I really do recommend that for people, because quite often we're so busy with, oh, I've got this coming up, and we know it's stressing us out, and we know it's going to stress us out, and we know there'll be an aftermath after to go, why did he say that, or why wasn't he talking to me, or how did she react to that, and were they happy with this, and the mind's racing. That's the time to go, I know it's coming, double down and deal with it in the present moment, and then move on.
That's very good advice. It's very true, isn't it? That is true.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to do any work with you, Grainne, how can they contact you?
So my website has my details, www.wellbeingtraining.ie. Email, phone call is probably the easiest way to get me. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, and thank you for being so honest and open and raw about your journey, because you've been an inspiration and really detailed information at the end about self-care, and it's so important. I can't thank you enough, and thank you for your time.
Great to see you again, Lucy. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you.